former program that I used to host here at WLJS that ended last November. You were the sexual rights advisor, and that's one thing that you said. I always remember every time you came on the program was that you said that rape was about power and control. How do you give that power and control back to the victim?
That's a great question because so much of it is, it's absolutely, rape is about power and control. It's not about sex. It's about trying to take the power away from someone else. And when we're trying to empower survivors of this crime, it's so imperative to give them as many choices as possible. And whether that's me asking somebody if they like, just a small question, like I'm just thinking about being at the hospital last night. Do you like saltine crackers or graham crackers? It's a silly, small question, but ultimately that's that person gaining a little bit more control over the situation. Each question that we ask, and I think a lot of survivor advocates will say the exact same thing, where it's like, I know that another center that's a standalone center has that when someone walks in, like, well, you can sit anywhere you would like. Why don't you choose where you would like to sit? And it's a small thing, but these small things add up to somebody gaining their power back and making those choices for themselves.
Just little things that everyday people take for granted.
Absolutely.
Where you would like to sit, what's your favorite food, what's your favorite color, what do you like to do? Tell me something about yourself that makes you feel happy.
Oh, absolutely. Because when you're in that situation, all of your power has been taken away. All of your control has been taken away. And you feel like you'll never get that back. So if you have those small opportunities, and it's someone as an advocate, it's part of our responsibility to try to empower that.
I was going to add on to that, the power element, and that's why I use that word, to empower the victim after an attack. And that's what I call it. It's an attack. Rape is just pure physical, violent, control power that's an attack on a victim. It's so important to start getting the power back for the victim. We can't give it to them, but we can help them get it. And that's the reason why we're here, to try to put that information out. The whole process of reporting, if it's done correctly, can get them stepping the right way to get their power back.
Also, too, another thing that has been mentioned in regards to victims who tell their stories, who come out and tell their stories publicly, is vocabulary and the words that victims use when they come out publicly to tell their stories. I wanna bring in Julie Nix into this part of the conversation. Why is vocabulary and the words that victims use so important when they decide to tell their stories and they come out to the world, letting someone know, hey, you're not alone. I've been raped. I've been sexually assaulted. This has happened to me. Why is the words that a victim uses to express what happened to them so important for countless of other victims who may be hearing their story as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you're saying is that it is the victim's story. It's not our story to tell. And that's one thing that I appreciate about the article that was written about Jade, or in conjunction with Jade. It was most definitely her story. And, she shared the details as she recollected them and her feelings about, what happened to her. And we have to respect that. So when people want to tell their stories, I think we need to listen. I also think that we need to listen without judgment. Because, I think some of the attitudes that we see, even among, students here, I have a colleague that teaches a class, and she did kind of an attitude survey, and I was just real interested to see what her students reported anonymously about it's a section she did on sexual assault, and I was just very surprised at the number of freshmen that believed that if a woman was drinking or a woman was wearing suggestive clothing, then, maybe that contributed to her sexual assault. I'm trying to think of some of the other items that were on there, that some women actually fantasize about rape. There were students that marked that they believed that, so I think that it's important that we recognize the myths about rape. And I realized, we really have some work to do here. You know, I've received a lot of positive comments about the article that came out. But then, you know, like I said, the attitude survey that was conducted in that, you know, freshman class, you know, revealed some other things.
Why do you think people's attitudes towards rape and sexual assault are so distant? It seems that, and even I have to be honest with all my listeners out there. I've covered a lot of stories in my tenure here as the news anchor for WLJS. I've covered tons of robberies. I've covered tons of murders. But I have not had the opportunity to really cover rape as in-depth as I've had with this story with the Jacksonville State University SGA president. And I can definitely tell that even just in my, even in an unbiased coverage of such a sensitive topic, there is still this distant approach to it. You know, it's kind of as if you're touching it with a 10-foot pole type idea. Oh, don't want to get too close to that. That's a little sticky. And let's try to talk about this as quickly as we possibly can and move on to the next story. Why do you think, Susan Shipman, that people are so unwilling to discuss rape and sexual assault?
Well, it's ugly. It's just ugly, and we don't want to think that someone we know could have committed that type of crime, that someone that we know is a victim of that type of crime. You know, we fail to call rape what it is. And Julie just was talking about the survey of the freshman class and what is not rape and what was her fault. And, you know, these are societal beliefs. And until we spend enough time talking about this and fixing some of that, changing some of those belief systems, and we're talking about a lot of work and a long time that it will take to accomplish this, but it won't get done if we don't start. So if I can't talk to my mother about sexual assault, you know, it may make her a little uncomfortable at first. She's a different generation, but she's my mother, and we can talk about anything. And then maybe she can talk to some of her friends about this, and she tells them what we do for a living, and they get appalled at first, and then but they want to know more. They want to know what they can do to help. And so bringing this out in conversation in circles besides the one that we're sitting in right now is what's really important. And using the words, it's rape. It's not, oh, he had his way with her because she had too many beers. That's not it. It's rape.
Do you all encourage parents to talk to their children about sexual assault?
I think it's a necessity.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's a necessity?
Because, I mean, you know, we've just heard, you know, our legal guest say that, you know, this is happening to children, you know, in our county, in our neighborhoods. I mean, so I think, you know, the discussion can't just start when they get to college. It's got to start, you know, much younger.
And I think one of the things that we're facing, and the reason why it seems to be getting handled with a 10-foot pole a lot, is a lot of people confuse rape with relationships.
How
In
so?
other words, we don't get how relationships work, and that a bad sexual relationship, bad sexual experience may suddenly backfire into a rape charge. And I think a lot of people are concerned about that kind of stuff, and they don't want to talk openly about it. What means no? What is consent? What's not consent? Etc. And then they hide behind alcohol and drugs and stuff, and it just spirals. And then all of a sudden, remembering that a lot of rapes are with people you know. I mean, that's what we're seeing. It's not some random person that just pops up a serial rapist.
This isn't the bushes, the
Right.
stranger in the bushes with the hoodie on.
These are people that they're familiar. In fact, as far as I can recall, Jade is kind of familiar with that part. He didn't come out of the bushes. So I think if we start working a little bit more on relationships, we might mitigate some of this stuff.
District Attorney McVeigh.
Well, I wanted to point out something, Ed, you and I talked about one time when we were just talking on the phone. It's disturbing to me that the #1 selling video game in America involves you being able to sleep with a virtual prostitute and then kill her and take your money back, and that people buy that and allow their kids to buy it. So I think if you're a father, I'm a father, and you don't prepare your kids, then you're doing them a disservice. But what we talked about last time is across the country, in California, I think Ohio, several different states, a recent trend where a girl is visibly intoxicated to the point of unconsciousness, and a group of boys have sex with her. And I say boys because we're talking about young men, and they videotape it and then put it out on social media. If you take that back to when I was a young person in the 1980s, and you didn't have all the social media and the desensitization, and you took a Polaroid picture of multiple men having sex with a young passed out girl, people would be appalled. Nowadays, people celebrate that, and they send it around, and they talk about this girl and the fact that she was voluntarily intoxicated, and maybe she sent out provocative pictures. That doesn't make it okay. It's not okay to have sex with a girl without her consent under any circumstances. So we have as a society failed somewhere along the line if that has become acceptable. And I think that's what these freshman polls indicate, is that people have begun to accept as an excuse that, well, she was drunk or she was dressed provocatively, and somehow she basically asked for what she got. We need to fix that because that's just not okay.
That particular case, too, that he's talking about, for anyone who's unfamiliar, for our listeners who may be unfamiliar with that case, and I remember covering the verdict for that case for those two teenage boys who were convicted in the rape of this young girl. She was drunk, passed out in a room full of other teenage boys. 16 and 17-year-old Trent Mays and Malik Richmond were both found guilty in an Ohio juvenile court earlier this year, and they have been sentenced to a juvenile detention center until the age of 21. And according to Ohio law, they will have to register as sex offenders for the next 25 years. So, Trace Fleming Smith, I remember you and I talking about that case, and I remember you and I talking about Steubenville, Ohio. That's the city where the case grew out of, Steubenville, Ohio. And these young men, they were football players. They were star football players at the high school there in Steubenville. And that one of the things you and I mentioned I mentioned vocabulary earlier, and how the vocabulary, even myself as a reporter, one of the terms that reporters were using to describe these young men were star football players, good students. Their lives are ruined by this incident. Even as reporters, and I even have to watch myself sometimes in our reporting of rape cases and our reporting of sexual assault cases, sometimes we have to be careful the descriptors that we use to identify perpetrators.
Oh, absolutely we do. Yeah, because again, that feeds into the culture of victim blaming that we have, and feeds into rape culture, which was absolutely something that we have in our society. So, we have to be very careful about anything that goes out, and with our conversations just one-on-one, because you just don't know who's going to be overhearing that. We talked about children, and the thing is that our children learn from the conversations that we have, and that the conversations that are surrounding them. So we have to be continuously aware of that. And when we're talking about star football players, we're talking about, they were good students. That may be so, but they're also rapists, and we need to hold them accountable for that. So our language needs to always be holding perpetrators accountable.
And we use the phrase having sex with instead of raping. We for having forcible sex with. Our vice president used that phrase, and that's not what's going on here. It's rape. It's not sex.
It is 5:55 p.m. here inside the WLJS Newsroom. I just want to go around and just have a final comment from everyone, if I can, in 30 seconds or less, or 60 seconds or less, whichever time you feel is more suited. Is there something you can say that can help someone out there who may be dealing with, as just millions of people across the country who are dealing with a crime that has been committed against their body, and they don't know what to do, how to find assistance, or even how to help themselves? Just, if I can, just quickly, everyone around the room, what is that one thing that you would like to say to those people out there listening to you?
like District Attorney McVeigh said, talk to somebody about it. Second Chance has a hotline, crisis line, that's operated 24/7, and I'm going to give you the number. It's 256-236-7233. That's 2367.